Good afternoon. I am calling to order our regularly scheduled meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Elizabeth Glidden, and I am the vice chair of this committee, chairing today in the absence of Councilmember John Quincy, who is out on city business. I am joined today by a quorum of the committee, including Councilmembers Yang, Palmisano, and Andrew Johnson. And we are ready to dive in. We do have one item that is at the dais in front of us, which is a walk-on item to be added to the agenda. The new item is the subject is requesting permission to proceed with the application for grant funds to the Office of Justice Programs for body-worn camera pilot programs. So I'm going to add this item, or move to add this item, to be number 14 on the agenda. It will be our first and only discussion item after our consent agenda. So I will move that we add this to the agenda. Any discussion of that? Seeing none, on approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that's been added to the agenda. So first I will go through the consent agenda, and then we will have some presentation on this grant request item regarding body cameras. Item number 1 is legal settlements, authorizing settlements with Constance Leaf, Lawrence Doyle, Michael Martin, Sally Waddell, Isaac DeLugo, and versus the City of Minneapolis and Janae Harteau for $62,500. And the second item is for Lutheran Groselle Lake versus Anthony Smith, Danielle Evans, John Doe, Jane Doe, the City of Minneapolis, and Chief Harteau for $15,500. Item number 2 is authorizing staff to execute a 3-year contract with Premier Process and Courier Services for $120,000 for 2015 to 18 legal process services from the city for the City Attorney's Office. Item 3 is authorizing staff to increase contract C 3237215 with Environmental Systems Research Institute by $30,000 for a not to exceed total of $130,000, extending the contract through December 31st, 2015, and using the ESRI contract agreement form for hosting part of the Information Technologies Geographical Information System. Item 4 is authorizing the application to the Metropolitan Council's TBRA pilot grant program for environmental investigation funding for the following projects: 4146 Fremont Avenue North, Western Motors, and Upper Harbor Terminal, and approving resolution authorizing staff to submit applications to the Metropolitan Council. Item number 5 is awarding exclusive negotiating rights to Fighting Chance Ryan Burnett as the developer of the city-owned property for a period of 6 months, and this is regarding the former fire station number 14 at 1704 33rd Avenue North, and authorizing staff to negotiate redevelopment contract terms, and upon successful negotiation, return for further City Council review and approvals. Item 6 is relating to Downtown East Commons project. It says to authorize staff to execute a contract with Conurbation LLC for owner's representative services for the Downtown East Commons project in an amount not to exceed $180,000 through December 31st, 2017, with options to extend. Item number 7 is accepting low bids relating to cutting of grass, weeds, brush, and branches with LLC for the North District and Aloha Landscaping Incorporated for the Northeast and South Districts. And this is for an estimated annual expenditure of $150,000. Item number 8 is the Powderhorn West Street resurfacing project, and this is approving a resolution ordering the work to proceed and adopting special assessments in the amount of $947,876.83, and approving resolution requesting the Board of Estimate and Taxation to authorize the city's issuance and sale of assessment bonds in the amount of $947,880, with the bonds to be paid from special assessments. Item 9 is water quality monitoring reimbursement, authorizing execution of a cost-sharing agreement with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for the city to collect stormwater samples at the 37th Avenue North Greenway Stormwater System and share lab results with the MPCA, and increasing appropriation and revenue in the Stormwater Fund by $25,000 to reflect reimbursement from the MPCA. Item number 10 is a 26th Avenue North Street renovation project, and this is relating to an MOU with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. This is a resolution authorizing execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to permit the city to perform work in Theodore Worth and Fairview Parks, and requiring the MPRB to maintain ground cover and trees within the center median of 26th Avenue North and Theodore Worth Park in conjunction with the 26th Avenue North Street renovation project. Item 11 is authorizing submittal of an application for a Tiger 2015 grant to implement the 35W Transit Access Project. Item number 12 is authorizing an increase to the contract with Shanahan by $90,000 for a revised contract total of $150,000 due to an increase in the number of property assessment calculations in the benefit area for the Nicollet Mall Street Reconstruction Project. And our final consent agenda item is accepting low bids for storm sewer cleaning from sewer services for an estimated expenditure of $738.71.72, and authorizing proper city officers to execute the contract. So with that, we have gone through the 13 consent agenda items, and I will move approval of all items. Any discussion on any of those items? Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to make a comment on item number 7.
Go ahead.
You know, with regards to accepting the low bid for Innovations LLC for the North District. And I just wanted to point out that, in the past in the North Minneapolis area, we've had issues with the folks who have been contracted to do cutting up grass and those sorts of things, that they've not been as responsive or as good as we would have hoped. And I think that, anytime we start a new contract like this, we have an opportunity to really build into the contracts performance measures and those sorts of things, so that whoever receives the contracts can be better about being responsive and cutting grass and those sorts of things. And so, if the folks at Innovations and Aloha Landscaping here are listening to this stuff, I would certainly hope that, they're receiving these contracts, but that they are responsive and they are working hard to do what they say they are going to do, because it really is quite needed, the performance that has to happen, let's say, on the north side, but anywhere else that we have a contract, because neighbors do pay attention. And when it's, I think, it's a situation where sometimes, we look at slumlords and how they don't take care of their yards, and we complain about that, and we're completely within our right to do that. But when the city is the person that's not performing the work of a city lot, that's when it looks really bad on us. And, if we're the person that enforces, we should be the person that actually lives up to, the values of what we enforce as well. So I think it's really important for these contractors to understand that and to work really hard to meet the needs of neighborhood groups or the neighbors that are close to those areas.
Thank you. Other discussion? Councilmember Andrew Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I actually wanted to speak to item number 7 as well. I echo Councilmember Yang's thoughts on this and the importance of this for the neighborhood association. So looking at the RCA for this, and the minimum to cut a lawn is $59. I believe that these contractors are being awarded. Actually, it's a much needed service, because it really does have an impact when their lawns are either through negligence or whether they're city-owned lawns or what have you. When they grow really out of control, there's weeds everywhere. It affects the neighborhood. It affects neighbors. I just want to mention something that a lot of other cities are doing, which I'm going to be working with staff on to hopefully explore here, is trying to improve the outcome of getting a faster, more responsive mow time for these lawns by actually partnering up with neighborhood associations and allowing them, first and foremost, to have priority and use this as an opportunity to actually increase and diversify their funding. So other cities have done this before. and neighborhood associations and community organizations then actually adopt a lawn or 2 or 5 or 10 and commit to mowing it. And there's tools and mechanisms in place for the city to easily track any complaints associated with that lawn going forward to ensure that the organizations are keeping up with that, and then in order to reimburse them for it. So I think it's a great opportunity where we can be really innovative potentially and try to help out not only our community organizations, but actually get better results, faster mow times. And I would encourage these 2 companies as well, as Councilmember Yang said, to make sure that they're as responsive as possible as we look forward at other options like this as well. Thank you.
All right, I am not seeing further comments. So with that, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And we have adopted our consent agenda. Next, we have our one discussion item, and we are prepared to have a brief presentation on this from Robin McPherson from the Minneapolis Police Department. And I'll just note that this is an item that we have not had time to review. My intention right now, just because we're still gathering some information, is likely to recommend that we forward this without recommendation so that we can continue receiving information and have further update if needed at Committee of the Whole. And I'd just finally like to note that we've invited the mayor's office to participate here, as they have also been tracking this grant application, and they may have some comment as well. So, Ms. McPherson.
Madam Chair, council members, thank you very much for allowing me to present this information today. What we're requesting is that we'll be able to apply for a office or U.S. Department of Justice OJP Bureau of Justice Assistant Grant for body camera planning, implementation, and evaluation. This grant award is up to $600,000. There is an there is a 50%, match component related to the grant itself. Within our grant, within the group that we qualify under for this grant, there will be an estimated 12 awards for a total funding of approximately $2.6 million. We would like to apply for it, but I think everyone needs to understand that there are some pros and cons, just like everything else. The pro is it formalizes the communication, the criminal with, and the understanding with our partners, including the community and the criminal justice system, and it clearly offsets costs to the community, assuming that we get a grant award. And I'd like to remind everyone that there is no guarantee that we will get the award, and certainly we don't know how much that award would be, only that it could be up to $600,000. I think the cons in this that everybody needs to understand is that it will delay implementation of the body cameras, and that does create some budgetary uncertainty. We have currently contracts with a couple of vendors that actually expire 9/30 of this year. Those contracts would obviously need to be voided. And also we don't know if the equipment will be available later in the year when this grant would be awarded. So with the state of the country right now with body cameras, that's a certain uncertainty. So those are probably the 2 biggest concerns that we have. As a reminder, we can apply for the grant and not accept the awards. There is a potential short-term negative impact at the federal level if we do that, but we have done that before within the city. So do you have any questions for me?
Yes, there are questions. Councilmember Yang.
Ms. McPherson, when you talk about how, let's say, if and when we are ready for body cams, that it could be outside of the schedule for the vendors, I mean, what does that mean exactly? I mean, is it that vendors go from town to town? And so let's say if they're in Memphis now, I mean, it's going to take a while for them to get back to Minneapolis, or what do you mean by that?
No. What I'm saying is that there are some main vendors out there, and currently they have a supply. I don't know how long it takes them to develop or produce body cameras. And so right now, we're kind of at the head of the curve as far as getting equipment, but 6 months down the road, we're not sure where we will be from that standpoint. So really, I'm sure that's going to be whoever is first in line.
Okay. And, just a quick question. I mean, I understand that as a city, I mean, we've moved forward with this pilot project to, understand what body cams do. I mean, how they're implemented, at the city level. But I mean, we haven't received, I guess, a full blown estimation on the total cost of a program and how to implement a program and all those things, right? At this point, we don't have or the police department hasn't given us as a council that yet, right?
That is correct. What the process we're in right now is actually finishing up the evaluations of the equipment itself. I would anticipate it would be 2 to 4 weeks before we would have that information available and before we would have an estimated true better cost to implement the full program.
Okay, and so it's not a foregone conclusion yet that we're going to move on with the body cam as a city, is it?
That's correct. It has
Okay.
not been approved. It would have to be approved.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Ms. McPherson. Actually, I have two. One is you mentioned a delay of the implementation. Can you give me a thumbnail of what that range could be? And then secondly, have we looked into with these two equipment vendors, could we make a commitment to the vendor, even though we would not be purchasing them, to keep that price certain bid together or intact?
Sure. I'll answer the second question first. Gina Ranieri and I had a conversation this morning about the contract, and we've come to the conclusion that because of federal regulations, we cannot do that. So we really can't do that until after we have an award situation. I'm sorry, your first question was regarding the delay. We are anticipating that pursuing this grant would result in a delay of 4 to 5 months.
Thank you.
And if I could, I'm not seeing other questions, so we might hear from the mayor's office. If I could maybe just interpret a little bit more from your comments about availability of equipment, if we had to change our contracts with vendors or try to update them, is that it might be longer than 4 to 5 months if we get into an issue of availability of equipment. Am I correct on that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so 45 months might be in some ways our best case scenario, which could be delayed if there's a delay in announcing grant awardees or if we get into issues with equipment shortages.
That's correct. The grant award is anticipated to come out in the month of October, and there have been delays on awarding in the past. So that's their best estimate at this point, and the time clock would then tick from that point on.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with a 4 to 5 month delay, there's obviously an opportunity cost there. It's really hard to say, though, what that opportunity cost is because it's based on actions that would be potentially prevented by having body cams. I think if you look at Rialto, there's a huge drop in complaints, for instance, on police officers. So obviously there's an assumption in there somewhere that by rolling out body cameras, we're probably going to see less complaints, less settlements coming our way. If you have any just ballpark idea of over a 4 to 5 month period, kind of on average, I know there really is no average with settlements, but if we're just even creating like a floor and a ceiling here of roughly historically, what do we typically do in terms of settlements? And then what would the reduction be over a 4 to 5 month period that we would potentially see? And also in terms not just of settlements in terms of actual dollars, but also resources where we can start to look at it and say, okay, so what's the cost of delaying 4 to 5 months? Is it $100,000? Is it $200,000, $300,000, $400,000? What kind of do we expect?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, I wish I could give you an answer to that, but I cannot. I think we would need to pull in the city attorney's office to do that.
All right.
Which I'd be happy to follow up with them.
That might be a good practice to even have just some ballpark range for us to better make a decision on this, because I'm sure there's definitely a cost to it. Certainly even there's soft costs of, the missed opportunity of sooner than later helping to improve relationships between public and police and furthering confidence of accountability and that sort of thing. But I also know there's definitely got to be some real dollars potentially as well behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we, I don't see other immediate questions, so why don't we see if Nicole Archbold from the mayor's office would like to give us some comments from the mayor's perspective, and then we'll see if there's any further questions for either. So thank you so much. Thank you, welcome.
Sorry?
I said thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair and council members. So the mayor really, the perspective of the mayor is that the priority falls along timeline and implementation. Implementing these body cameras as soon as feasible is really important. We share the concerns of the MPD along the lines of the delay and factors that could contribute to an additional delay, as well as the concerns that Councilmember Johnson raised around building community trust and the implications of not having cameras when they might be needed on the interim.
All right, any questions? Ms. Archibald, I don't see any, so thank you very much, appreciate that. I will go ahead and move that we move this forward without recommendation, just knowing that we're still, I think, finalizing some of the questions around what would be allowed. I guess another just outstanding issue is thinking through how much of a negative impact is it to go ahead and apply. And that may be, again, based on how firm we feel about moving forward or not. I will say I have concerns about moving forward with this grant opportunity. I'm concerned about the timeline issues. I think there's also just some of the intricacies of how we move forward in grants. We need to really carefully consider, is this the money we want to spend our political capital in seeking? And finally, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that this would be for the capital, not for operating dollars, which may be where some of our larger challenges and some of the bigger picture implementation issues are that we need to consider in the future. So it sounds like that might not be correct. So please help us understand what this might cover.
Madam Chair, it's somewhat correct. The grant itself is really for the cameras and for the hardware costs. At least that's how we would present it. The matching, there is a matching component of this, and the matching would be for those other softer costs such as storage and any FTEs and things like that. So, but equipment would be the main part of the grant, correct?
Okay. Thank you very much. So I believe I made a motion to move this forward without recommendation. Discussion on that? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that has been approved. And so we will expect that if there are any further updates that we'll have staff available at Committee of the Whole, just in case we have some discussion, noting again that this has come forward without a recommendation from this committee due to the unsettled nature of moving it forward. So thank you very much. With that, I believe we have concluded with our business for today, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.